Hello, it's Tristan here from ZebraInvest, and today I want to run through subdividing and title splits, the actual background on how it all works. So what I've done is I've come up with 4 steps that let's run it from start to finish and how we can actually implement this and do this. So we've got 1 to go through for planning, 2 for legals, registering address, and finally getting the utilities all in place. So I'm going to go through this and explain roughly how this all works and how you can actually do it. And the idea being that by the end of this, you should be able to understand how it works and why we're going to do it. So with a couple of other videos I've done on here, I've explained about a property called 5 High Low Road. And this is a freehold property where it actually came with an annex. And the annex can actually be turned into its own separate property, whilst the main property can be split off them to turn into 2 detached houses. And then that way we're going to get a much higher end value on the property and be able to create 2 really nice family homes. But that's one example of a way that you can pick up a property and split them. You can also buy, say, a property where you've got 1 property at the front, 1 property at the back, split them into 2. You might have terrace houses where you've had 2 terrace houses knocked together at one point. Again, split them straight down the middle and turn them into 2 properties. Or you could do it for more than that, I guess, as well. The other side is you've got something where people go from freehold to leasehold. This is typically where you either are taking a property where you've got brand new build and you've built it as 1 freehold block, and then you're then turning it and splitting it into each individual flat in the building. Or it could be where you're buying a property that already has flats or other units inside the building, but they're all just on 1 title at the moment. And by splitting onto separate titles, you're then able to sell each of the units separately. Or you might want to remortgage and value each of those properties individually. So then hopefully you get a higher end value than what the property is worth as 1 property. So what I'm going to do is I'll jump in and run through these steps and explain what we're looking at. So you can see here, I've got the 4 steps that we're going to go through, and I've put them into order for how you're going to be able to achieve it, because without one, you're not going to be able to do the other. So the first bit is going to be planning permission, and we're going to jump in and run through how that works. Once you've got planning permission, that's going to allow you to actually split the property into multiple units. Then, once you've got that agreed, you need to have a solicitor on board who understands what they're doing and how they're going to be able to split a title and how it's all going to work and what you're looking to achieve. That can include whether that's architect's drawings or it could be simply the drawings that you've given to them to work from there. The next bit is you've got to register an address. Without an address, you're never going to be able to get any utilities in it and no one's going to be able to buy it. So we're going to register address. Finally, we're going to run through the utilities that need to supply that property, how you get them sorted, how you get the place connected. So you can do this from start to finish and be able to get a property across the line. So let's jump into planning. So when you're doing a title split or a subdivide, you need to make sure you've got planning permission to be able to do that. And by that, I mean, it can easily be that you look at a property where it's got an annex or it's got another property with it. But you might not be able to use it as a separate property to the main one. Someone may have already got the planning permission for you, so it's a good one just to look up and have a check for that. The way you can do this to check whether or not a property already has planning permission is, I'm going to open up here. You can literally just find your local planning department by looking for what property you've got. So local council finder, and usually you should be able to just search it, find your local council. Say, for example, the example I'm going to be using today is 5 High Low Road, which we're working at the moment. But here you can see who the local, the council, the county council is, and then also who your local council is. So this one at the bottom here is going to be the one who are responsible for planning permission and that side of things. So what you can then do is you can then search simply South, Norfolk, for example, planning. Then what we're going to then come up with is usually something like this. We're then looking to be able to search for an application. So you can then go in here and just by clicking through and doing a little bit of research, you can then find a property. And you can find that property to then find the history of the property, find out what's happened there and whether it does have permission or not. So this is just loading that up. The South Norfolk website is a little bit slow, but then you should be able to see the applications that we've made. So here we go. So we have got applications. You can see here, this one's for 5A High Low. So that's the one next door that we've just created. And then unfortunately that's to stop loading. But you could have also seen there, you'll see new applications, the planning applications we've put in to be able to split the property to 2. Once this loads, I'll just open that little application up for you. Doesn't want to load. Here we go. So here you can see the certificate for lawful use as an annex. It's just that one was originally to say, look, this annex, this property does exist. It's been here for years. The next application here, you can see conversion of existing annex to provide single self-contained dwelling house. That's converting that annex into a single property. So now we've got 2 separate properties there rather than just the one. And the person who I've used to do all of this work, if you want to get in touch with them, is RS Studio in Southampton. There's a chap there called Ranjit whose company it is. He does a fantastic work there and he's really helpful to use and he's great for doing this kind of work. The other side of things, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, is the other way you can do it is when you buy, say, a block of flats or a property where you've got more than one flat or property in the building. So what can happen there is you will have, say, for example, 5 flats in that building, but the owner's never got planning permission. So what then you're going to need to do instead is get lawful development certificates. Lawful development certificates come in 2 ways. One way is that you get 4 years of use, and at 4 years of use, you submit a lawful development certificate. At this point, the council can then decide whether they want that property there or not, and then they can then rubber stamp it and say, yes, you've got planning to be able to keep using it. The golden rule, probably the best one, is 10 years. And so if you've had that property for 10 years in the same use as it's been a flat for 10 years, and you can demonstrate it's been a flat for 10 years, then at that point, the council, you apply for a lawful development certificate with all your research, background details, floor plans, everything else. Someone like Ranjit sorts that all for me. They then rubber stamp that and then put planning in for you. But the council at that point has to approve it. At 4 years, it's subjective. So what we do, we then would go through that and we would have achieved either we've gone through the process of submitting a planning application to split that property into 2 and say what we're looking to achieve, or we've done the lawful development certificates. Once we've achieved planning permission in either of these ways, that's what mainly creates the uplift in the value of that property. So, for example, another property I'm buying at the moment, we're buying it for £300,000. But once we've got that uplift and we've sorted out the lawful development certificates, it's worth 515. So just knowing this little bit of information about title splitting and subdividing can add real value to a deal. So the next step, as I said, is moving on to legals. So the legal side of it is splitting that property into different parts to be able to then either to be able to sell them in future and to be able to have separate units. So the first part of it is here, number 1, transfer of parts. That's used when you've got a freehold property that you're looking to split into 2. So what would happen there is you have what's called your piece of land. You usually have a title plan or a map of that property. And then what you need to do is draw outlines or get outlines on the plan to say what part of the property is going to belong to one side of it and what part of the property is going to belong to another. So what I'll do here, I'm going to show you, hopefully I can just jump into a property I'm working on at the moment. So if I just open this up, I'll just take it off the screen now, I'll show you one that we're doing. So it's ZebraInvest. So here you go. So you end up having this plan here is what is a location plan, and it's used for a title plan of a property. What we've got here, the property we have here, right across here, that is 5 High Low Road. As you can see here from this diagram, is one big mass of property. But what we wanted to do was to split this into 2 properties. So what you can see here on my photo is I have got, hopefully I can zoom it back out and reset it. You can see we've got one area where I'm not quite sure what I have in there. You can see we've got one area here that we've allocated for parking, but this is the way you would actually do it. But here you've got a shared access area that you mark out. Then we draw one side of the property which we're splitting on a transfer of parts to one side of it, And then we've got another side of the property which is being transferred apart to the other side of the property. So then we've now split the property into two parts. So by transferring part of the original title you've purchased to a new title, that becomes one part of the property, and then the transfer the other side becomes another. And so that way we've then split one freehold title into two properties. Again, if you've got any questions on this, have a chat with a good solicitor, but they're going to easily be able to do this as they're part of their bread and butter. The other side of it is you have freehold to leasehold. And freehold to leasehold, that is when you've got a block of flats, for example, that property I said at £300,000. You're buying the whole building, and then what you're going to do is split that into individual properties inside the building. And they will have what's called a lease plan, which shows what they own, what you own, and who has different responsibilities. A lease is typically drawn up once, and then you'll use that template to replicate for every other flat in that building. And the reason being is you cannot have inconsistencies, because otherwise each flat owner has different responsibilities in the building and it makes it impossible to manage. So they would split it up like that. And then with it, that's mainly just a legal side of it. Typically, I would say with the freehold, you would want to keep the management to yourself as the freeholder. So then that way, if you need to sort out the roof, you need to sort out the communal areas or anything else, you can. This will allow you either to keep the property in future, sell individual units easily, or it means you could refinance all the units individually as they've got leases on them. But there are other products out there which are called multi-unit freehold block mortgages, and you could just take one mortgage over the whole building and you wouldn't have to split it, but you would still need to have the planning permission in place and the other bits I'm going to jump on to. So the next bit is getting an address. So you've got the planning permission in place, boom, fantastic. So what you need to do is go to the local council and ask them for an address. This sounds fairly simple and straightforward, and fortunately it is. So, for example, here we know that South Norfolk are now the local council for 5 Harlow Road. So what we do is South Norfolk, and you can see I've already typed in the search up here, new address registration. So you're looking to register a new address. The reason you have to do this first is you have to have your address registered with the Royal Mail. And once the Royal Mail have got that address, then utility suppliers are able to supply that property. And at that point, you can get quotes from each of them to then be able to supply the building, and then it can literally become a separate property from the other one once you've done building works, if you need to do building works, or wherever else down the line. So here you can see that you've got street naming and numbering. You're going to have to take a look at a bit of research into each of those yourself. But here you can see that it said adding or renaming an application form. So you can do that. You get a form here, for example, and what you're going to do is, once it opens, is you enter the details, explain who you are, what you're doing, everything else, then you email it off to them. And what you can also do is you can suggest property names if you want. So, for example, the 5A Harlow Road is actually known as Juniper Cottage, but you can come up with that, you send it off to them, and they are going to ask for a payment. You can see here £63 to be able to name that property. For example, if you've got a freehold block, you're splitting it all up into separate units. Again, you say what the current unit is, and you explain to them that we're having 5 flats in this building and what all those addresses and numbers are going to be. So we've done that. So now we have got, we've got in touch with the local council. We've sent off the bits. We've paid them the money, and at this point, Royal Mail have decided to create these new property addresses. Fantastic. So this means the next step is going to be that we need to get utility suppliers in, and that sounds easy, right? Think again. Utility suppliers take a little bit of time to get people out to come do the work, and it's understandable because they need to dig up a road, they need to dig up access to be able to get into your property, and they're going to want to need to book in the staff to be able to go do it. They need to get the resources and everything else in place. So it takes time. So it can take anything between 6 to 8 weeks to be able to get a gas, electric, water, broadband, whatever supply to your property, because it's the first time connection. And you've also got the thing with water as well. I haven't covered this in my little slide, is you need to be able to work out where the sewerage is going. So if you've got a brand new property and it's not one that you're subdividing or tidal splitting and it doesn't already have waste, you're going to need to get that laid into the property too. So each of these utilities are going to cost money. and each of them cost a varying amount of money for each one, but they range probably between about £1,000 and probably about £2,500 each from what the quotes I've received are. So let's jump back into it. I'll explain how you can find them and how you can work out who's going to be your supplier for your local area, and then how you can then go out and be able to organise this. So back to the screen. So first thing, we're going to look at gas. So when you need to get a connection, you're going to go, and it's very simple here, you're going to search gas connection supplier. So let's quickly stop sharing and recap. So gas connection or electric connection is not going to be British Gas. It's not going to be npower. It's not going to be Opus Energy. It's the company who actually owns the pipes in the ground that comes to your property. The reason I say that is the person who's supplying the property, you don't have little, gas particles going down a tube saying, oh, I'm only for British Gas customers. No, that gas goes to wherever. It just goes down the pipe and turns up at the property. And the supplier who, for example, as I said, like Opus Energy, for example, they bulk buy at one location and agree a price, and then that gets supplied to your property and they control your meter. They don't actually own the pipe underneath the ground. So you need to go to the actual connection supplier in your area. So the way that I've done this is, you can see here on Google, I've simply searched gas connection supplier. At the top here, you have two results coming up. You've got one from Ofgem. And here you're going to see it says set up a gas or electric connection. So it says, look, contact your local network companies connected to gas. Here we go. And the next bit, it says, who is my gas supplier? We'll come to electric supplier in a minute. And we're going to click find my supplier search tool. Here we go. So what I'm going to do, NR50HP, and this is 5 Highlight Road. And you can see, look, we click find address. And what it then comes up here is you can select the address of the property that you're looking for. And we should be able to come down and find number 5 Highlight Road, for example. Yep. And here you go, you've got 5 Highlight Road, and then you can see that it's got a meter reference point because it's already got a connection. But what you can see here is it's telling you who the supplier is. So this is the supplier, that's the person who's selling the energy. This person, the transporter, is the person who's putting it all through those pipes to connect to your property. And that's the person that we want to get in touch with. So I'll open that in one section, and then I'll go back to search, and I'll show you again. Another property that I've just sold recently, to give you an idea, is in Southampton. This one is 4 Johnson Street. It was a rather nice all-on-suite HMO. So that's the right property, and here you can see this time round it's Southern Gas Networks. So what you do this time is we're going to say Cadent Gas, and we're going to put connections after it. And here you go, Southern Gas connection. Okay, fantastic. What we've got here is Cadent Gas. They've got new gas connections coming up there. And what you can do here is they're going to have a form that says, do you want a new connection for an existing build, new build, and you can apply for that all through their website. They then come back to you and will give you a quote to tell you what the price is, when they can get going. You then pay them. You pay them before the work commences, and then they'll come out and do the work in the street. And then I'll come back to what actually happens in your own driveway in a minute. Once we do the other ones. Again, Southern Gas Network, you can see here that connections and document charges apply for a gas connection. And here you can do, and then again, it's the same thing. You can apply online to set up your application. All right, cool, that's great, Tristan. But I want to do electric. So the exact same process happens again. So look, this time we're looking at electric, right? And we go over to Google. And this time we're going back, and if we went back to Ofgem, you see it says, who is my electric supplier? Electric can tell you who is doing it, and they've got a search tool, so we click search tool. And here it says, who's my network supplier? And we can do the same again, so NR50HP. Then you click go. And here you go. This time it's actually even funkier. It's actually given us both of them, Cadent, and it's giving us UK Power Networks. So what we can now do is we can search UK, and I'll do one more through as well for the other one. LP, and here again, different one, but here same principle. You've now got the energy suppliers details to be able to do that. So I know that UK Power Network, and then what we're going to do this time is connections again. connect a new electric supply. Hey. So here they've got all the electric supplies, and what do you need? What do you want to do? New electric connection. We've got a house, we've got flats. Go through the same process to be able to apply for it. You can also find other companies that will be able to connect onto electric for you, and they can do that live. Some other companies will charge you less money, but that's a really detailed deep dive to be able to find that, and this is already throwing tons of information at you. So that's how you've got that one. The next bit is water. I believe on my list it was saying water. So let's have a quick look. So yeah, I am right in saying that. So we've got. So we have got water to look for. So unfortunately, I know in Norwich and Norfolk, we're only supplied by Anglian Water. Anglian Water are the only company. It's a little bit different, but Anglian Water are the only company supplying water throughout Norfolk. If you go down to Southampton, it was always Southern Water who supplied it. If you then went across to, say, Bournemouth, there's another supplier there called. Come on, Tristan. I've lost the name of it. So let's just do this as a little quick search. Let's say water supplier. Let's see who they are. Water supplier. Again, for example, this is doing the same principle. Searching it, and it's going to tell you who it's going to be. Portsmouth Water, Southern Water. So there you go. You got between the two. Water service is, so with this one, you're going to have to connect 2 different people each time to do it. But that explains how you're going to find them. And then you then say, for example, say Portsmouth Water connection. And again, it's the same principle, and you're looking developers, new services, Portsmouth Water, and then they're going to be able to arrange and give you a price for doing that work. So that's that. And then finally, on this list of things that I had here, we have telephone and broadband supply. So across the whole of the UK, there's 2 people, 2 main suppliers who will supply you with a telephone connection or a broadband connection. Nowadays, it's actually a legal requirement to have a broadband connection in a property. It always used to be a requirement to have a telephone line, which is what most of the broadband now comes down anyway. So on that note, we can then come and say you can either go to Open Reach Connection, or you can do something like Virgin Media Connection. And these 2 are the main suppliers in the UK. So look, register a single broadband plot or register your site. So you can simply go in and you can register each of your units, each of your property to be able to have a broadband connection, electrical connection. Sorry, a broadband connection. And here you just run through the same form, same thing again. When will Virgin be in my area? How can I install it? And again, you can reach out to Virgin to ask them to connect to you as well. And then you can speak to them or check your postcode to see if they've got it. For example, HB 5, and we can go and say, is this in my street? If it's in my street, then you should be able to get a connection. Why are we asking for your number? So look, no, what can I get? And this is going to say what broadband you might be able to get there. If there's already, there you go, look. So with Virgin, there's already cable in the street, so they can actually run that all the way up to you, and they're probably going to charge you for a connection for doing that. But that way you can get broadband into your property. So that has been a whirlwind tour of all of them. I've covered a lot. So you can now, that is the steps 1 to 4, how to get your planning in place, how to get the legals together, your new address, get your utilities. And at that point, once you've done all of those, you will have a separate unit, a separate building that can be used as a new building and sold separately. I realise that's a lot of information, a lot of detail to take in, but once you've got that step to, from start to finish, you will be able to do it. So thank you for your time. I hope you've liked this video and you found the information useful. If you subscribe to my channel, that'd be fantastic. And if you're going to run through this process, if you've got any flaws or any comments, let me know below. Cheers.